Hi, my name's Esther, and welcome to the second episode of Angry Birds Interviews. And today we have none other than Maximus Overdrive.
Hello all, Maximus Overdrive here. You probably know who I am if you watch Zester 2. Kind of two peas in a pod here in the Angry Bird Plush community. And we have lots of fun here. We know each other quite well, so this will be a fun interview.
Alright, today I have got a total of 15 questions, so let's begin. What got you into making content?
What got me into making content? This probably goes back. There used to be an Angry Bird Plush YouTuber that went by the name The Star Shines Noah. They were kind of my main inspiration for making Angry Bird Plush history videos because I always knew I was always into the history of Angry Bird merchandise. It always kind of fascinated me even from day one when I was collecting. Of course, at that point there really wasn't much of a history to it, but by the time we got around 2016, 2017, this stuff was kind of, well into the rear view mirror. You had the Salad Toys situation going on at the time, but we really didn't know that. We thought the merchandise was well in the past, and there was a lot of mysteries associated with the merchandise because over the years we had seen all sorts of pictures surface on Toy Wiz or various other websites here and there, backgrounds of Rovio HQ photos on the social media pages, and there's a part of me that was just motivated to dig into the history of the merchandise, and what better way to cover it all than by launching a YouTube channel and talking about it. And at first, I was pretty naive. I didn't know my way around. I didn't know the proper YouTube conduct. I didn't really know how to edit a video, but we all start from somewhere, right? And over time, it's kind of snowballed into what it's become today, where it's kind of this. I, I've got all the answers I'm looking for, and at this point, the community's just at the behest of whatever I want to give out. But it's been super fun, and my main inspiration was the Star Shines Noah, because they made Angry Bird history videos that were pretty much like mine. Like how mine are at this point, where they're well edited and the scripts are very good, and it's a nice those videos served as a nice introduction into the content, the topics, the mysteries, and it was covered very well. And I took direct inspiration from that. At the time I basically just kind of copied the cadence of those videos to some extent, though I was uploading daily at the time because I was my content wasn't really all that well edited. I just wanted to get stuff out there, kind of establish myself, and the Star Shines Noah. I mean, they couldn't keep up, and eventually more people just migrated to my channel, and I kind of feel bad about that, but I mean, we're good friends, and we've made up since. So uh, it's a long story, and it's probably too much for this interview that we're doing, but that's basically the gist.
I don't think it was a too long of a story. Honestly, I wish I was collecting back then in like 2017, 18. Because like
That was the
personally, I think I got a bit late into this. That like at a point where a lot of stuff was already known. Uh,
Yeah, that's the thing. The 2017, 2018 type of era, I want to call that like the early years of what we can now consider to be the modern Angry Bird plush community, where we're just kind of overanalyzing the history of the merchandise, not necessarily celebrating the merchandise itself, just from a design perspective or anything like that, or talking about, oh, this new item's coming out or this new item's coming out, because all that was well in the rearview mirror at that point. But at that point, it was before this whole Commonwealth collection thing became a thing, and we really didn't have any of the answers that we seek today. So everything was just kind of, we need to overanalyze any small nugget that we could possibly get our little mitts on, and finding a new image or a new sample in the background of a photo or a video. I mean, that was a huge deal. Nowadays, the way we go about it, there's a new sample that gets dropped. Oh, that's cool, and then we move on because at this point it's just kind of commonplace. So it was definitely a cool time to be in the community, and I'm glad I got into it at that time.
yeah, it was a wild west, you could call it back then.
Indeed, the Hammam High of the Angry Bird Plush
Yeah.
community, the Hammam High era.
What are your plans for videos after covering every Commonwealth set?
So as Zester has alluded to, my goal with the channel right now is to cover every single Commonwealth plush set. That's the near future at this point. I'm getting close. There isn't that much more to cover, but what is left to cover, and the way I do it, it just takes a while. The videos take months to make, but after we get through all of that, it's at some point I need to get on with my actual career. I'm a bioengineer major. I'm in my third year right now, as of the time of recording. I will be in my fourth year of university studies and all that, and it's going very well for me. And I just want to make sure I get my place, find my place, get my job, and go on from there. I just want to be in a stable position. Uh, but that doesn't mean the YouTube channel is going to stop. But it's definitely at some point I have to come to terms with the fact that it's got to be my second thing, not my primary thing, which it's kind of been over these past few years. But at that point, I want to start covering other bits of history related to Angry Bird merchandise. Obviously, there's a whole deep sea of Angry Bird merchandise that I can possibly cover. I could cover anything from pens and pencils to the Mattel games, obviously, or Connect stuff. There's just a whole vast sea of merchandise out there that nobody really is taking a look at. Um, and I want to cover some of that stuff, but the way I do these videos, it's premised on the fact of me actually owning the merchandise or owning some examples of various pieces of merchandise from the lines. So the way I'd want to do it probably would be covering any sort of merchandise that I already have in my possession. For me right now, I got a lot of Connects and Mattel stuff, but that's just because that's what I've generally been collecting, and that's what I've been into since I was a little kid. Uh, but there's plenty of merchandise lines that do fascinate me that I've never gotten the chance to collect. We're talking like tactic stuff and talking like Angry Bird reflectors, or I mean, because I live in the USA, there's only I mean we're the biggest market for Angry Bird merchandise, but we didn't get everything. And a lot of stuff that does fascinate me, it is like Asian market stuff or European market stuff. So, but that'll all be covered in due time, and at that point, I'll just kind of leisurely cover whatever I feel like covering. It'll certainly be a less I don't want to say what I'm doing now is stressful, but it'll be much more lax, much more free. I'll be able to have more freedom in what I want to cover. So that's all down the road though, and I don't see that happening for another year or two from the time we're recording this.
Yeah, I mean, these videos, I can only imagine that they take a long time because I don't do a lot of editing in my videos. For example, take like a few hours to edit, but I don't see it ending anytime soon. And on the topic of endgame of the Kaml videos, the third question is the Plush iceberg still going to happen?
So the Angry Bird Plush iceberg has been a video topic that's kind of been percolating in the background. I want to say I've never actively worked on it. I've never like gone through and actually made like an iceberg chart. Iceberg type videos, they had their huge, I guess, wave of popularity. Everyone was doing them about, I want to say, a year or two ago, I mean, when they first became in vogue. Nowadays, you don't see as many of them, or at least as many of them blowing up the way they did. Um, and at some point, I'm sure there will be a new video format out there. It's the whole gist of what I want to do is not exactly an iceberg video. If it happens to be an iceberg format, sure. But what I want to do is I want to have like a best hits of like the coolest facts and trivia related to Angry Bird plush merchandise, because I mean this stuff, there's so many little odd facts that are associated with them. Some of them are cool, some of them are just wacky. And I feel like it would make a cool video topic just going over them, nonstop, hit after hit after hit, and then you get down in the iceberg if you want to do it that way, and you got the most interesting facts at the bottom. But that would just be a kind of a generally cool video concept to do, specifically as it relates to Angry Bird merchandise, and hopefully we'll get to something like that one day. But again, that would definitely be something at the end of it all, because I think it's most important just to cover each set, get all the history out there the best I can, and we'll go from there.
That just gave me a video idea of something like 107 facts about the Angry Birds plush merchandise that you didn't know.
Yeah, see, exactly. That would be like if you want to call it like the prehistoric version of the iceberg chart that we have today. It was the 107 facts video, and eventually, I guess it evolved into the iceberg. But what could be next? I mean, there could be some other wacky idea that someone puts out there that just so happens to blow up, and it's just another version. Like it's essentially just a it's a redefining or it's just under a new name of 107 facts. It's iceberg. It's this. It's that. It's just another way of covering. Here's all the facts that related to this one really niche topic, right? So
Will the Mattel video saga ever be complete? Because I know people have been bugging you about it before, and I mean they kind of still are doing it now, but I don't see as much.
yeah, that's definitely for sure. So the way I made those two Mattel videos. So back in 2019, I made two Angry Bird Mattel videos, part one and part two. They're some of the most popular videos on YouTube related to Angry Birds Mattel. They've done quite well in terms of the views. I've never been some guy who chases views. I mean, I'd like them. I'd like more attention to come to this hobby, but it's not the biggest priority for me. But it's definitely cool to see videos do well and see enthusiasm for them. Uh, and then the way I left those videos kind of on a cliffhanger. If you ever watch like one of your favorite TV shows and it just ends on a cliffhanger where you just want a little bit more, and naturally you're gonna have people bickering and complaining that well you never finished it. But at this point, that's like those videos were 5 years ago, and the style of videos I make now is completely different from back then. I mean, it's still the same general formula where I'm covering the history of Angry Bird merchandise, but it's just done on a different level nowadays. Back then, at that point, I think that was probably the early days of me using Adobe Premiere Pro to edit my videos. But um, back then, I was primarily just an iMovie user. That was just the pre-installed editing software that comes on all Apple computers. I use MacBooks consistently to edit the videos. But nowadays, I even integrate After Effects, which that's a whole separate can of worms, and that has basically doubled the length of actually producing these videos, the time it takes. Uh, but would I ever make a Mattel Part 3, if you want to call it that? It would never be, like, actually a direct continuation of what I did before. What it would be is it would just be the whole thing done from scratch again. I would start from 2011 and go all the way up through the 2013 stuff, which we got a pretty good gist of how that stuff was distributed now. It used to be kind of a big mystery as to where was the deluxe game released, where was Halloween released, and now we know about these little one packs that were done for Halloween as well, the Happy Holidays 2013, and all these little random like add-on packs that were released in random European countries, even like Greece and stuff like that. So, but we got a good stranglehold on what the history is, and really at this point, it's just about making a video about it. But again, that'll be in the probably far future. When I say far future, that's maybe like a year or two out from what I'm doing now. And who knows where I'll be in a year or two. So, if it ever happens, that's good. If it doesn't, I mean, I just never got to it.
Okay, so the next two questions are honestly just questions that I will be asking every single person I have on this series. And the first one of those is, what is your favorite bird and pig, both as a plush and as a character?
So for me, everyone knows what my favorite character is for the most part. I still get the occasional question of who my favorite character is, but all the time I have to respond with Construction Hat Pig, which I don't even know if you can call Construction Hat Pig like a specific character. There's more than one Construction Hat Pig in the world of Angry Birds because all he is just a minion pig with a silly construction hat, but there's something endearing about the character to me. It's just the way that stupid yellow hard hat just sits on his head. It's so silly. It's it's almost a bit at this point. In fact, I think it is a bit. I never when I first got the construction hat pig plush, which is why it's like my favorite pig. Uh, it was just because it was absurdly expensive for all those years, and eventually I found what I considered to be a quote unquote good deal at the time, which that was 175 United States dollars that I got that for back in 2018, which was probably top of the market back then. But since it's gone even higher than that, I mean, you can see construction at pigs selling for upwards of 500, $600 nowadays on secondhand markets. But it was just kind of a stupid plush to me for to be that expensive at the time. And eventually, I just took a liking to it because it was kind of this holy grail piece to me that I lusted for many, many years. And just so happens to be my favorite pig. Now, I like I like my postman pigs, I like my chef pigs, I like my professor pigs, the chronicler pig, all kind of the oddly specific pigs out there. But construction hat pig is definitely my favorite Angry Bird character and certainly my favorite pig. And as for the birds, I'm kind of in the same boat with that one, where I like an oddly specific variant of Red, I would say. I think the Nerdy Birdie is definitely my favorite character, and you can pick any Nerdy Birdie of any of the original characters because technically Nerdy Birdie isn't just Red. There's the Blues, there's Chuck, there's Bomb, there's Terrence, there's even a Hal out there. There's a really obscure render of that. I tend to think I'm a bit. I definitely am a nerd. I mean that if you watch my videos, it I do come across as quite I don't speak in that nerd type way, but I'm definitely a nerd as it relates to the history of Angry Bird merchandise, and anyone who knows me in real life considers me kind of be like a Sheldon type figure. I get that nickname quite
At a
often.
point where someone
So
gets that far into this stuff, everyone could be a nerd about this stuff when they
yeah,
get deep enough.
that's for sure. And it's just that it's the thing of it even extends into the real world where I'm sitting in this Calculus 3 course and I'm doing a group project with some of my fellow classmates, and they just refer to me as Sheldon the whole time, just because I'm a nerd for anything that I happen to get into. So um, I don't know if I hold that position with pride at all, but it just happens that I quite like the nerdy birdie characters generally as it relates to the birds because again they're a merchandise specific thing as well. So if I'm into Angry Bird merchandise more than I am the game itself, it only follows that some of my favorite characters are a direct result of merchandise lines needing to exist. So Construction Hat Pig and Nerdy Birdie.
And the second question is, what is your favorite Angry Birds game?
Favorite Angry Birds game? So this definitely for me has to be Seasons, just because of the diversity in the levels. Because you can be playing Trick or Treat and Seasons Greetings, Hogs and Kisses, and all the pigs are wearing different accessories, and the level design's completely different. There's always a gimmick with each one of the levels, um, and then even in Seasons you had special levels like Abraca Bacon, which introduced the portals. You had on Thin Ice, which introduced Tony. Obviously, it's a special character, and generally, it's the vibe of Seasons that really gets me. You got the special the soundtracks whenever you choose a level and then go back to the main menu. The soundtrack changes to a specific one made just for that update. I mean, I just think that's so cool. The game's got so much varied content in it that it's basically just like the best hits of Angry Birds at the time. Now, Seasons, I think after kind of 2014, 2015, generally took a nosedive in terms of quality, but I can forgive it for that because 2010 to 2014-ish, I mean, that was the best time. Now, I think if you can count Angry Birds trilogy, that is the best Angry Birds game. I think that objectively has to be the best Angry Birds game, just because it's a combination of three separate Angry Bird games, and generally three of the best ones, obviously being the original three with enhanced graphics on console. I mean, that's what we're all asking for at this point. Everyone who wants Angry Birds on their Nintendo Switch. I mean, you can get like a Steam Deck or something like that and run it on an emulator if you want, but generally that would be my favorite Angry Birds game. But if I just had to pick one, I think it'd definitely be Seasons. I think Space is a close second, but Seasons for me.
What is the process of making a video like for you?
So this is definitely something that I may even explore, like actually making a video about like what goes into making the history of insert set, or insert merchandise line. This is definitely something I want to look into one day because I'd like people to see what actually goes into making something like this because it's not anything special. I wouldn't say like there's nothing that I do that is specifically unique in any sort of way. I mean, I have my camera, I have my computer, and those are basically the two main tools that I'm using to capture footage uh, and to get pictures and actually put it all together and send it out to YouTube. But what I'll normally do is I'll have a script on like Google Docs or something like that, Microsoft Word, whatever word processor you want to use. I'll write up a quick script. It just comes straight from the head, and because I don't have to do any research because I basically am the walking encyclopedia. I already know everything. In fact, people are relying on me to give them the information. I'm literally the source. Like on the Angry Bird Plush wiki, it's like I'm basically the unnamed source for everything. at this point, but I'm writing the script, and then I actually have to read off the script, which that generally takes a while too. That'll take like 2 hours to read off the script because you want to enunciate the words in a specific way. You don't want to just read through it like you're literally reading off a manuscript. You got to say the words with certain inflections and certain tones. Eventually, you got to edit that all together. So eventually, after a day or two, I'll have a full audio track, like a WAV file of the audio for the video, and then from there, so I have the audio, and then I want to make the visuals to match up to the audio. I'll go in my little collector room that I have, where all the plushies are, and I'll take them off the shelves, the ones that I'm talking about. I'll whip the camera out. I'll get the tripod out. I got this ring light I get out to get the lighting conditions that I want, and I go through and I got my little turntable. I put the plushies on the turntable. I got my little table. I'll put them on the table and do all these little panning shots and change the focus and all that kind of stuff. Blah 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 blah. You get all the footage on this little SD card. I shove that in my computer, and I just go through and I do these little funky visual edits that are completely visual based, but also have the physical video that I took in the collector room, and that all comes together, and eventually you got a video, roundabout way, one way or another. And usually that process for about a 10-minute video, that'll probably be 2 to 3 weeks, I want to say. But for a video that approaches 20, 30 minutes, that's probably a good month, a month and a half, depending on what I got going on at the time.
How was the feeling? How did you feel to get in contact with Kaml for the first time and going through all those archives and plushies and getting to see all that crazy stuff?
So that process was, I mean, that was the most surreal. Probably, it was probably about a week where it eventually it got from first making contact with, for those who don't know, I reached out to Alec Kessler, a former Commonwealth employee. That was the first time when he responded to me. That was the first time somebody had actually responded to an inquiry from Commonwealth side ever. Like, I legitimately ever. It used to be this kind of running joke in the community. We alluded to that kind of 2017, 2018 era, where at that time it was kind of a joke regarding Commonwealth. Like, they're kind of this mysterious entity. They made the plushies back then, but I mean, they never said a peep, and they continue to be, they ghost everyone. I mean, besides a couple of messages on Instagram, people leaving comments here and there, but you never got any information from them. So it was amazing to actually hear back from somebody who put me into contact with somebody else, and from there it happened. I mean, I started actually interviewing the CEO of Commonwealth, who we know to be Stephen Greenfield, and I would interview him probably about every week, and I would just have a list of questions I would ask him. I didn't record any of it, uh, just because there was really no need to. But in hindsight, that probably would have been something interesting to actually put out there. But it wasn't really supposed to be like that. It wasn't professional or anything like that. I was basically trying to get to know him. He was getting to know me, and eventually we gained enough trust in each other to where we actually met up in person in New York and all that. And eventually we went through this archive that they had, because they mentioned, we actually kept all the stuff, and it's just off site. It's in this basement, and it'd be cool if we could go there and go check it all out. And eventually that happened, and I mean, seeing it all actually in person, I mean, that, I don't want to say it was the coolest day of my life, but it's up there. Eventually you get the people out there who are like, well, that's kind of sad. You seeing plush toys is that the coolest thing you've ever done, but I'd say to them, you don't get it, okay? This is
Yeah,
pretty special. This isn't something that just anyone can do. Uh, but yeah,
it's making
totally surreal.
history.
Coolest thing. Yeah.
Do you think there's a possibility you could ever lose interest in Angry Birds as merchandise, games, or altogether?
See, for me at this point, Angry Birds, like, it's such a part of my life, and it's done so much good for me. It's introduced me to so many amazing people. It's given me so many cool opportunities. Um, that I just I don't see how I ever could at this point. That will there ever come a day where I'm not making YouTube videos and always kind of thinking about it in the back of my mind, like, should I be pursuing this more? At some point, it's got to become the second thing for me, and I'm trying to figure out when that transition period will be. Uh, but for me, I can't see myself not being into this stuff. It's especially with the gift I've been given in this relationship with Commonwealth that I have, where I get to oversee the coolest merchandise ever made for the Angry Bird franchise. I get to make these awesome videos for this amazing community that I've helped foster, and it's such a special thing in my life, and that the passion isn't going away for me. I may be 20 years old, and I don't know how I'll feel at 40 because life comes at you fast, and there's so many opportunities in life that change the course of where you're going. But as of right now, Angry Birds is where I'm at. It's the franchise that is most special to me, and I want the best for it, and I'll do whatever I can to make it, you know, the best I can make it, with whatever limited capability that I have, and I feel an obligation to do that, because at this point I have a lot of sway in the future of the franchise, and I won't get into much more than that at this time, but definitely something I'm never gonna lose the passion for. I can I don't want to say for sure, but you know
Alright.
that's how it goes.
Honestly, I could say the same, but you never know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you got all these opportunities that are coming up for me, especially as a 20-year-old. These next 10 years for me, this is going to be the start of my professional career. You know, who knows what that's going to look like? But in today's world, with all this technology that we have at our fingertips, there's plenty of time to integrate everything into your life, and it, you can find ways of doing what you want to do. You never have to be handcuffed into doing something that you don't want to do. So I think you can still maintain your hobbies in today's world, probably more effectively than you ever could. Though there's always these things fighting for your attention, but you have the will and the ability to choose what you want to do. It's not you're never going to be slotted into doing what you don't want to do, unless that's just the path you go down, and at that point you're just not going to be happy. So do what makes you happy, because that's what's most important, right?
In your opinion, what is the weirdest slash craziest thing Commonwealth did in all the years they did Angry Birds?
So this would definitely be the Fun Video TV set, which, as of the time we're recording, that literally just premiered about an hour ago. That stuff, how does that even happen? Like, how does that get that far in the development process, where literal physical samples are made? Like, somebody who worked for Commonwealth at the time, evidently they just went on YouTube. They were maybe watching a video on the official Rovio mobile YouTube channel, whatever it was, an Angry Bird animation, and then in their YouTube recommended, there probably was a Fun Video TV video just sitting there, and they click on it and they just assume it's an official animation. I mean, they were desperately searching for any characters they could make at the time, and I wish that was the case today, where there was enough interest in the franchise where they'd be scouring through things like that. And to some extent, I wish they were kind of doing that maybe in the later years, 2013, 2014, as the whole Angry Bird universe expanded. But as a result, we got these incredibly strange plushies based on Fun Video TV designs and on weird vehicles, and there's the weird kiwi bird. It's totally bizarre. It's almost difficult to come up with an explanation outside of that. And even the explanation that we do have, it feels kind of shaky at best. And truly, we'll never know because, well, unless we find the original designer of those, which, I mean, that's a needle in a haystack, and even if they remember, it was probably just, it could have been something they were doing literally in when they were high or something like that. I don't know. You can never put something past the people working in New York, so who knows? But I'd like to see how that went down. We don't have any factory photos or anything like that. I can't put an exact date on when they were made, but crazy, weird.
Personally, to me, the craziest part is that they looked at those videos and assumed it's official. Like, how does one look at that and assume that such animation could be officially from Rovio?
Yeah, the thing about that, you and me, we're in the weeds with this stuff, right? Like we know, we know the ins and outs of the Angry Bird
Yeah,
brand. We know the look of the franchise. We know the look that it's supposed to take on. For the people who are making the toys, they're generally aware of Angry Birds, but even at that time, the kind of the general art style of Angry Birds was kind of open to interpretation a little bit, even within Rovio. I mean, yeah, there was still a brand look that they were supposed to have, but there really wasn't this exact science that they later established with some of those style guides that we've seen, where you have to, when you're representing the Angry Bird brand, it has to look like this. And back then, I mean, you could go walk into the streets of New York, and you'd see bootlegs everywhere, and that's what Angry Birds was at the time. It could be anything because it was really up to the fans at that time because Rovio really hadn't established a certain look for the brand. So I could see how somebody not familiar with Angry Birds just kind of assuming, well, I mean, I guess that's official material. Sure, that we'll make something about that. I just wonder what it would have been like, pitching those things to Rovio. Like,
yeah.
hey, Yako Izolo, check this out. Hey, this is our next sample. What do you think? What the heck is that?
At what point would you call your collection complete? Like, when would you say, yep, I'm done, this is complete?
So, I would say I made a video last year where I mean I did a trade with you where I got the Hungarian release of the Winter Blue, I got the Winter Chuck, and I got the Serbian Matte Fur Hal. And to me at that point, I was safe to say I was safe in calling the collection complete. That's what I even titled the video. I called it finally completing my Amber Bird plush collection, or whatever I titled it. Uh, and to me, at that point, I felt like it was complete. Now, of course, there's a different standard when it comes to my collection because I got all these samples because it's kind of my job to overlook them at this point. But it, are there other samples out there that I don't have? I mean, of course, sure. And there's stuff that I've seen that I'd like to have my hands on, but ultimately it either doesn't exist or it's in somebody else's hands who has no idea what the heck's going on here, or somebody who doesn't want to give it up. And if you're somebody out there who has something that I don't have, I mean, I'm not gonna come beg you for, oh, you gotta give this to me. I'll pay you anything, or I'll trade you anything you want. I don't do that. I mean, if you got something out there I don't have, good for you, and that's cool. That's probably a cool feeling to have something that even Commonwealth themselves didn't archive, or even something like me that I haven't somehow gotten my hands on. But there's definitely stuff out there that I like to get my hands on. But I think at this point, I'm safe in calling my collection complete. Now, there's a couple of plushies that I have, like I got a matte fur blue and a matte fur Chuck from the Family Dollar set that came out in 2012, the third gen ones. They don't have their hang tags. I'd like to get my hands on some versions that do, or just the hang tags themselves, so I can re-tag them. That'd be cool. And then you can say my collection is even more perfect. But I think I'm cool at this point.
Well, personally, to me, it's kind of a complicated thing. Because as a perfectionist a bit, I mean, kind of a perfectionist, I have like a complete set, but then I think it's not complete because where are the tags? Where's the sound chip? And it just goes on and on.
And that is exactly it. That's the dilemma. See, I got to the point, it was probably about 2020, 2021, where I was making these little collection videos, and looking back on them now, I'm like, I had all these plushies, but like half of them had the tags, half of them didn't. And at that time, I got to the point where I'm like, I got the opportunity to do the coolest thing ever. Why don't I just collect all of them with the tags? I mean, I'm not gonna stop collecting anytime soon, and eventually, if I just start looking for this stuff over the course of the next few years, I'll eventually get to the point where I do have everything with the tags. there's going to be stuff out there where you can't be picky about it, like with the Finland and Hungarian and Estonian winter birds. You can't be picky with that stuff because that stuff there could only be like 10 in existence, say of the winter chuck. I mean, we've never seen the Hungarian one pop up on the secondhand market. We don't even know if Estonia got them. We've only seen like one or two of the Finnish ones. So that one you can't be picky about. Even as a perfectionist, there's certain limits out there. Now, you see, for me, in this unique position with Commonwealth, and I have access to the factory and all that, I can say I got the artwork for the tag. We have all that archived. I could ask the factory for a favor. Can you make me a couple of these tags that I can just use to retag stuff? And they would probably do it for me, but it wouldn't come cheap. I mean, it's manufacturing. Now there's tariffs out there and all that have been imposed on China from the United States, which is a whole another separate can of worms. So, uh, but could I, if I really want to, could I pull legs, pull arms, and get things to happen? Sure, but tagged or not, if I can get every piece out there, get as many of them with the tags, that's good enough.
How long did the classic video take? And do you think it was worth all that work?
So I'll answer the second part first. Was it worth it? 100%. There's nothing more rewarding than hitting that final export button on Adobe Premiere Pro and seeing that video render out and then throw it off to YouTube and be like, "Yep, there it is." I mean, that's months of hard work right there. And in the case of the classic set documentary, I mean that video, I was probably editing the video. It was every day for hours. I mean, I would go. It was summer of 2024. I would come back every day I was doing this class over the summer, Biology 2. Do that in the morning. There would usually be a lab. I'd be done with all that, blah, 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 blah. I'd get out of that. I'd come home. I'd sit at my computer, and I would just start typing away, editing away, and all that. Um, and that was uh, the main portion where I was actually going through and putting it all together. The development of the video probably began the year before that, though. I kind of had a general script or a general idea, a general conceptualization of the video itself in 2023. It was definitely something I wanted to do because it got to the point where I had all this stuff from Commonwealth, and I look back at the original classic set video I did, and I'm like, that was the best we could do at that time. But the best that we can do ever is at my fingertips. It's possible. I just have to work at it. And so I got all these ideas in my head, and when I had the time that summer, I went through and did it. And that was the coolest thing watching that premiere and how much of a big deal in the community it was. And I hope the video, I really wanted it to do really, really well, like really, really well, in the typical way that you'll see niche YouTube video essays sometimes explode. But I don't necessarily need to do that. I just need to know that people enjoyed it and people found it to be like the coolest thing ever who were into the hobby, and people can appreciate it for what it was, because it was definitely a passion project for me. It was definitely something that needed to be done as like a baseline video that people, when they remember Maximus Overdrive, this kooky guy on YouTube who is way too deep into the lore of Angry Bird plushies. I mean, that's the video to watch. That's the video to introduce to people to me, and that should be my lasting legacy, right? So, coolest video I've ever made, for sure.
What is your favorite video that you made?
Yeah, so definitely the classic set documentary, because that's just the one that took the longest to make. That was that definitely had the coolest information, and part of the process of making that video was interviewing Steven and all that, which was interspliced throughout the whole video. And I thought the coolest part of that was, for me, finally getting into contact with Commonwealth was cool and all, but it was just kind of like the community was basically hearing things secondhand from me. I'd hear things from them, and then I put it out in the videos. I wanted to get. I took that opportunity in that video to actually have Steven himself talk to you guys. I had all these questions I prepared for him. It's basically what we're doing now, where you had questions prepared for me in an interview. I had questions prepared for him. Now, the way I integrated them into the video, you never heard me asking the question or us having a conversation. I basically wanted him to go on a monologue of, whatever topic I wanted him to address. And that to me is the coolest part of that video, hearing someone from Commonwealth, like the Mr. Commonwealth himself, basically, talk to all of you guys and show you guys that, he knows what he's talking about. He's well aware of the dynamics of the Angry Bird Plush community and kind of what we're doing over here as well. I have him keeping an eye on all of it and all that, and it's super cool to hear his perspective as well, because usually in the videos all you hear is me going on rambling, blah 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 blah, and that's basically what I'm doing here. It's a diatribe of just me throwing out a bunch of words and hoping they sound good together, but that's probably the reason why that video is the coolest one to me, and the whole process that went into making it, right?
Yeah, I mean, interviewing Steven must have been awesome. He seems like a very nice guy, you know.
For sure. He's definitely been, super nice to me and all that, letting me actually have this opportunity and kind of get what I've been wishing for my whole life and make, dreams come true and all that. And, you know, it I wish more people could experience it as well, but at the same time, he's a busy guy. I'm a busy guy. We don't need more fingers and more hands in the situation. It's just gonna complicate things. So we got things in a good situation right now, and it's just he's a nice guy. The company's awesome. You know, I wish we knew all this sooner. Basically, I wish I could have gotten involved way sooner than I did, but I'm glad I caught on. I don't want to say just in time, but definitely, if things would have happened, 4 or 5 years even from now, I'm not sure we'd be getting the same results that we're getting today.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, a lot of the stuff would have probably been gone by then with
Who knows?
all the storage. The knowledge would have been probably also gone a lot.
Yeah, they've kept everything on like hard drives and all that, like all the factory photos that I splice into the videos and post here and there. They had all that, and you could parse through it and all that, but eventually it get to the point where they probably wouldn't care anymore. But right now they're at the point where that they're interested in what I kind of want to do in making this stuff and establishing the history of the toys themselves, because they know how special it was too, and I guess I'm the liaison for them of putting all this stuff out there, because they don't really have the capacity to do it. They don't have anyone working for them who makes YouTube videos and is good at this kind of stuff. They're not at that point they're not at that point anymore. Maybe like 15 years ago, they probably could have had someone do it, but when you're at the time, working with all the stuff, you don't have the foresight to know that it's going to be that special. In the moment, yeah, we all wish we could go back to a time previous, but in the moment, you just don't know.
What is your favorite company aside from Commonwealth that did plushies? And on a similar note, what is your favorite company that didn't make plushies and did other kinds of merchandise?
This one, I always have a tough time with this one, because I never quite know what the correct answer is, at least in the moment. There's a lot of plushies that I enjoy the style of, because for sure, Commonwealth did the best job capturing what they look like in the game. You look at a Commonwealth plush, you compare it to the game, they're synonymous with each other. They definitely complement each other's style. I mean, the designers of the Commonwealth stuff, they did an amazing job. And because they did such an amazing job, it feels like half the companies out there who were making Angry Bird plushies, they literally just copied what Commonwealth did to a T. I mean, we've seen, Sunwoo and Toy Plus and obviously PPW from China. I could have a cop out and just go with them. I mean, PPW did some amazing stuff, actually making a production Bad Piggy Bank and the Mustache Pig backpack clip, and generally their plushies kind of have a cool style. The phone holder red, that's another cool example of what they did. And there's some the Thai company from Thailand, which Cartoon Character Co. Which did the Singapore Changi Airport plushies as well for that promotion. Those got a cool style to them, and especially with the fat pig from Angry Bird Space. That's a lovely plush. Then I even look at like Furryu. from Japan with their little niche plushies that they did as well. They got a cool style to them. Just so many plushies that are out there. Even like you can consider the tactic uh, add-ons plushies as well, because I mean that's kind of what they are. Uh, but for me, I don't really know if I have an answer to that question in particular because Commonwealth is basically that's all I know. They're the coolest plushies that were ever made, and I really don't need anything outside of those. Uh, Now, as for merchandise lines that aren't plush related that are amongst my favorite, it definitely used to be Mattel. That was before we got into this whole era where we have what we call Mattel children, where the community for that has definitely hindered my interest in the line as a whole, because you don't have to consider the community when you get into a certain line of toys, a certain hobby, but it's definitely a factor. You can't just ignore it. And definitely there's some toxicity going on there. Let's just say that. And I'd like to keep my hands off. And generally, I think I've always kind of preferred Connects in the back of my mind. And even today, Connects to me did a better job at capturing some of the niche and oddities of the Angry Bird franchise, with their little figures and representations of those characters. Those have definitely been cool sets to collect, even if I don't put them together. I like looking at the boxes and all that. So I like my merchandise mint. But that would definitely be another line that I really like. And generally stuff that maybe had like television commercials made for it, or there's just so much apparel and accessories. Even like the LogoNet hoodies that were made, and LogoNet, that's another brand that did plushies. Though I'm not generally a huge fan of LogoNet plushies. They just have like a a towel, like a carpet look to them that I'm not totally into. But I really like the hoodies that they did because those are totally iconic. The 3-star LogoNet hoodies, because those were worn by all the Rovio higher ups at the time. So those have definitely been cool to collect. Trying to get my hands on a full set of those. That's another one of my favorite merchandise lines. But there's just so much out there. I mean, they made 40,000 individual pieces of merchandise back then, officially licensed merchandise. And then you could even look at stuff that isn't officially licensed out there. I know a lot of people who like the Links in plushies. Those are super cool. And for me, like even official merchandise, I generally like stuff that came from the 2010, 2011 era. Not totally into a lot of the newer stuff, obviously. So I look at a licensee like Gear 4 that did all the iPhone and iPod and iPad cases and all the smartphone accessories, the speakers. Their packaging was just really cool. So I'm rambling, but those are just some of my favorite merchandise lines that are out there.
Yeah, those are valid takes, honestly. What is a character that didn't get a plush that you wish it did?
Let's think about this. Hmm. For me, it's definitely got to be a pig. It's got to be some sort of pig. There's so many pigs in the world of Angry Birds, and there's only so many birds. The birds are supposed to be kind of this endangered species. That's kind of the vibe that they give off. We even see that in the Angry Birds Rio trailer, right? Where they're this valuable endangered species, this angry bird flock that can't fly. So I think it's definitely got to be a pig because there's so many pigs in the world of Angry Birds, and they have so many different roles, so many different accessories that they can possibly have. Um, but the pigs that weren't made, that you can point to, if you open a book like the official guide or like Hatching a Universe or something like that, or even play a game like Bad Piggies or take the Birdsenality test that used to be on Facebook, there's two characters in particular that I'm thinking of, and I think they're both tied for first place in terms of plushes that I want to see at this point, and that would be the Professor Pig and the Chronicler Pig. I feel like they should exist, and I would love to see them in plush form, uh, because we have the Minion Pig, we have the Helmet Pig, we have the Mustache Pig, we have the King Pig, we even have Chef Pig, even if he doesn't look like how he did later. He's based on the original depiction of Chef Pig, and that's okay because he's still Chef Pig. He still serves that role. We even have a niche character like Postman Pig, and obviously we mentioned Construction Hat Pig, the Cowboy Pig. They didn't do a Miner Pig. That'd be another one that'd be really cool, but again, that's a little too niche. Talking about primary characters. This If you're building out a like we have the whole flock of birds, right? We have Red, the Blues, Chuck, Bomb, Matilda, yada yada. We have all the birds, even the Mighty Eagle. If you want to look at the original flock as 10 characters, we have all 10. We don't have Silver, but I don't. For me, I don't really care about Silver. I'm probably not the only one who feels that way, but that's generally just the way I feel. But for the pigs, we're talking about the main pigs. We got the Minion Pig, the Helmet Pig, the Mustache Pig, and the King Pig. You can consider the Professor Pig and the Chronicler Pig to kind of be secondary pigs. They're very important in the societal structure of the pigs, and I mean, can you just imagine them as plushies? I mean, think of how silly they would look. And yeah, it'd be super cool to see something like that. And I dearly wish they were still into making niche characters like that. They kind of came into existence 2013, 2014. That would have been a brilliant time to be doing those, but it just it didn't line up. Yeah, had they been 2011, 2012, maybe we could have seen them. But um, even mentioning Bad Piggies, there's two other characters that probably fall into that boat too, and being Ross and the Mechanic Pig from Bad Piggies, because that's a game that really was underrepresented in terms of Angry Bird merchandise. It got essentially nothing outside of like a scooter, and there was a sticker book, and there was the canceled Tactic Power Cards game, right? So Bad Piggies would definitely be something cool to see as well, and you can consider Professor and Chronicler kind of be part of that. But I almost feel as if Professor and Chronicler are more important to the societal structure of the pigs, and therefore they should have plushies if you want to. There's all these people out there who make Angry Bird plush skits and like little story type videos and act out the scenes using the actual plushies, and I think those stories would really be enhanced with characters like those. You got people who've made customs, but the customs will never live up to actually the real things, right? So
Yeah. And wait, hold on. I forgot about three extra questions that I wrote down yesterday and didn't include them.
all
So
right, bonus round.
the first one is: have you ever looked closer into the bootleg side of plushies, stuff like Links In, All Toys, Hello World?
So for me, I definitely see the discussion for that kind of stuff. Uh, my problem is I'm too in the weeds with Commonwealth to even even consider thinking about other stuff at this time, especially unofficial stuff. Uh, 'Cause for me, as a kid, I don't think I would have even been interested in stuff like that. It was definitely something I stayed away from, just because there was always kind of a stigma to having something that wasn't official. Nowadays, it's the unofficial stuff that actually tends to be cooler than even the official stuff, because the official stuff is so sanitized. It has to look a certain way, and the unofficial stuff has free reign. I mean, if you don't have the license, there's no standards you got to comply with. Of course, it's all completely illegal, but who's stopping you these days? There's so much illegal stuff going on. I mean, even Kaml dabbled in some of that during their final few years with the Angry Birds license, and the first couple years where they didn't have it. But those plushies are definitely cool, and they're definitely unique, and it's definitely something I want to expand my knowledge about in the future once I'm kind of done with the whole Commonwealth thing, which I'll never truly be done with, but at some point it can take a backseat.
Right. I mean, personally, they are very unique compared to like very official stuff. There's Links In who has all these weird expressions, those sprites represented that I don't think I've seen anywhere else on merchandise as a whole.
Exactly.
Or
They take like screenshots from the game of like these really oddly specific renders, and that's what they base them off. It's not like the official, like uh, character turnarounds that Rovio would provide, maybe in like the style guide or something like that, where or like they give a suggestion like, the character's gotta look like this. It's gotta be like the neutral expression. With the links and stuff, you got like the angry king pig, or like the open mouth minion pig, or like the screaming red. I mean, those are really cool, right?
will these so-called overdrive gameplays ever make a comeback?
So the Overdrive gameplays, I did a series with Angry Birds Reloaded when that came out. I wasn't totally into that game, but it wasn't really the goal of mine to like make a whole playthrough of that. I love to do a playthrough of Angry Birds Trilogy, but I'm not really sure there's a market for that. Not that I'm looking for a market necessarily, but like I said, I'm not chasing views or anything like that. I'll do whatever I want to do, just because I like doing it. But I don't really have a setup for something like that. I don't really have like a, I, I'd have to actually like go through and like figure out a place to put the mic and all that, and figure out a place to put the camera, which I could do all that. But as of right now, I don't really know if I have the time or the want to be going through and like doing like gameplay, let's play type stuff. It's just not really my wheelhouse. I'm more of a history archivist type guy, and that's kind of my role. But definitely something I've thought about, and definitely something that I may explore in the future as like, if you want to even call it like quote unquote lazy content, because it's easier to produce, it's easier to get runtime out of that, because you don't really have to do any visual editing. But what I tend to do in my videos, I think people can appreciate more because of the effort that goes into it. And I hope people see the effort that does go into it, because there's people that do, and then there's people who just watch the videos and think they're cool, but don't think much more of them. And, I just like people to see the hard work that goes into it.
Do you think there's a chance for Commonwealth to get the Rovio license back?
So at this point with Commonwealth, I've been I've been nudging them and nudging them and nudging them. I'm trying to subtly hint to them anytime I can. Hey, is there ever a possibility you guys could reacquire that Angry Birds license? Okay, it's you know I, it's definitely a tricky situation because the license it costs this fixed amount of money. It's a fixed amount of money at any given time. That fixed amount of money is actually a variable amount. It depends on at what exactly you're licensing. If it's plush, that's probably going to be the most expensive license because plush toys are that's definitely the biggest piece of merchandise for Angry Birds. And certainly right now they have the third movie going on, which they're prepping their licensee portfolio uh, for that movie to create all sorts of different pieces of merchandise. And I think uh, we find that's kind of it's flown the coop at this point, uh, to where they kind of have everything already set up in place. So if Commonwealth was to reacquire the Angry Birds license, it wouldn't be anytime soon, I don't think, just because of this third movie thing where the license is going to be more expensive because you have this theatrical release where this is in theory where you're going to have the biggest sales. It would definitely be something along the lines of like what Mighty Mojo did, um, where not exactly what Mojo did, where you actually like contract out the production of the plushies to another factory. Commonwealth would just handle it themselves, and they would be the official distributor, and they would have their name like directly on the toys and all that. I've tried to get them to do that, and there has been consideration for doing that. I mean, we've talked about it every time I'm in person there and we talk about it. That's something that is brought up. It's like, hey, we could do something like Mojo where we do a very small run, but it would just be like the original characters. It wouldn't be anything new or unique. You wouldn't be getting these characters that we've always wanted that they didn't make back then. It would just be, Red, Blue, Chuck, Bomb, the standard characters, right? Now, backdoor, what you could do if you have the official license, you could go to the factory and say, can you guys do a favor for us by making a small run of a certain character or a certain, like, make up a new character just from scratch or make an old toy like a chef or a postman like they were doing at the end of their run on Amazon and sell them for, not as much as what they would otherwise go for on eBay, but, quite a bit more than you would say a standard plush like Red at a $25 price point. Maybe you would sell it at $70 or something like that. But would something like that be possible? Perhaps. But that's always fishy and all that kind of stuff. The general gist is it's something that we're generally always looking into, and I mean for sure, I would love it to happen, but I just don't think they're at the point in time right now where they want to get into something like that. But that could change at any time. Frankly, you know, I'm not gonna rule it out, but I'm not gonna say it's happening for sure because it most likely it won't happen, but it's on the radar.
Well, let's stay hopeful. Maybe one day it will return.
That is the hope because you know merchandise it's inextricably linked to the history of Angry Birds. Angry Birds itself, part of its success is the fact that the merchandise was a pillar of the popularity of the brand. I mean, that's half of the brand is the merchandise. It's half the brand was built on the back of the merchandise. The game's cool and all. We all love the game. The game's how we got into it. But the merchandise is a physical representation of something that was digital. The game, you can't hold the game. You can't jump into the world of Angry Birds. Like, it's not an actual place. We all wish it was. But the merchandise allows you to kind of ingratiate yourself into the culture of it. And I think it should be a priority for Rovio, frankly, to have this stuff on store shelves. And they don't. There's the stuff that's out there. First of all, it's no good, and second of all, it's difficult to get your hands on. So, like, what are we doing? I have no idea what's going on there, and I'm gonna get to the bottom of it. But one of these days, there's something going on there that there's some mismanagement, something going on that needs to change, and I hope sincerely that we eventually get to the point where it does. And as I get older and as I get more opportunities to kind of get my hands into the situation here, maybe I can figure it out, and maybe I can help save what is otherwise becoming kind of a forgotten franchise, unfortunately, in the public cognoscenti. This is a franchise that, like I said, means a lot to me, and I think the merchandise is a pillar here that should be relied on because we all love it. You won't find anyone who actively dislikes the plushies. I've never ran into someone who says, "Oh yeah, no, those things suck." No, obviously, they're so cool. Anyone in Angry Birds loves them, eats them up. They're great, and even for new fans, fans who weren't around back then, you gotta have them. That's why the Mojo stuff was really cool, and maybe we can do something like that again. If the opportunity ever comes up.
Yeah, I mean, if something like Mojo comes up again, let's just hope they don't the next company that would take it up, let's say, wouldn't do what Mojo is doing right now with those runs of their own when the quality has dipped a lot.
Yeah, it's a shady industry, I'll tell you. There's some crazy stuff that goes on over there in China, and oftentimes it results in stuff like that, and they try and pull a fast one on consumers, and unfortunately, people won't notice. But luckily, we tend to have pretty good eyes here in the Angry Bird Plush community. We've been exposed to too much of it for them to slip that one by us.
And that's all for today. Thank you, Max, for coming on here, and thank you for watching. Did you enjoy the video? Who should I invite next? Let me know in the comments below. But for now, all I can say is bye!